been a firestorm on the internet. There's a couple of firestorms going on right now, and we're going to talk about pretty much all of them that have to do with autism, because that's what we talk about here. But the one that I want to focus on during this hour is Senator Jeff Sessions, who has, Mr. Trump has given him the nod for the Attorney General position here in the United States. And there are lots of people that are posting lots of different things and saying, let's, take a look at how he might be as our Attorney General. And one thing that came to light in the last week and that's been posted everywhere are some comments that he made on the floor of the Senate as a senator on May 18th in the year 2000. It was a speech entitled Education, Discipline, and IDEA. And there have been some quotes extracted that people have been really angry about, myself included. I'm going to be honest about that. It makes me angry when people make comments and we blame the child. When we blame the child, I feel that we let everyone down. We were all children at one point, and there's been a lot said. So I want to back up and I want to read to you from the actual speech. And then I want to talk about some things that are very disturbing to me based on this, because I fear that sometimes people can stand up and sound incredibly reasonable and go, this is wrong. And it's very easy for other people to go, oh my gosh, that is wrong, when it's not entirely factual. And I'm going to use the word ignorant. And when I say ignorant, I don't mean it in all the negative connotations about ignorance. Ignorance is when you do not have knowledge. And in this case, I believe that is, and ignorance is not something to be ashamed of. Ignorance is not something that we should go, oh, well, so-and-so is ignorant, because ignorant doesn't mean that you can't learn. It just means that you aren't aware of this. And I believe that if we take awareness and give it to people, there are things that I am ignorant to and I want to learn. And that's how we grow, right? But I don't want people to just stop and go, oh, well, this is, so let me start. This is what Mr. Sessions, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's 15 pages, but he begins and he says, Mr. President, I want to share some additional thoughts with the members of the Senate and those watching what we can do to improve education in America. Well, yay, rah-ray, right? I believe in public education, he goes on to say. Oh, good, thank goodness. I have taught, and my wife has taught in public schools. All right. I say that to express how deeply I care about it. We have been active in PTA as our kids have gone forward. We want to improve the system. We want to make learning occur more regularly. I don't think anybody could be in disagreement with that, right? We want to help teachers. Yay. I believe in American teachers, he goes on to say. Good, so do I. They are some of the finest in the world. They are well trained. Now there, Mr. Sessions, is where you and I part. Because of what you're going to go on and say. I don't think that they're, let's say this, when a teacher's, and I'm a former teacher, lots of classroom experience, more than a decade of classroom experience. And I can speak to the fact that and I'm also very involved in the PTA. We have a situation going on in classrooms, which you're going to go on to talk about, but we've not given our teachers training for that. We haven't. And I defy you to show me where we have. Okay, so he says they are well trained. They give their hearts and souls to it, only to be frustrated by regulations, paperwork, and discipline problems resulting from mandated rules passed by this Congress. I'm going to share some thoughts today, and those in education in any state of America will know what I am saying is true. They will have heard these kinds of examples time and time again, but the vast majority of Americans will not believe it. They will not believe these things occur. Over 25 years ago, for example, we passed a Federal Disabilities Act. It was designed to mandate to school systems and require that they not shut out disabled kids from the classroom and that they be involved in the classroom. If they have a hearing loss or a sight loss, or if they have difficulty moving around in a wheelchair or whatever, the school system must make accommodations for them. They would be mainstreamed. They would not be treated separately. That was a good idea, a goal from which we should not retreat. I hope no one interprets what I say today as a retreat from that goal. But in the course of time, we have created a complex system of federal regulations and laws that have created lawsuit after lawsuit, special treatment for certain children, and that are a big factor in accelerating the decline in civility and discipline in classrooms all over America. I say that very sincerely. Teachers I have been talking to have shared stories with me. I have been in 15 schools around Alabama this year. I have talked to them about a lot of subjects. I ask them about this subject in every school I go to, and I am told in every school that this is a major problem for them. In fact, it may be the single most irritating problem for teachers throughout America today. It was really brought to my attention a little over a year ago when a longtime friend, District Attorney David Whetstone in Baldwin County, Alabama, called me about a youngster in the school system classified as having a disability. It is called emotional conflict. He was emotionally conflicted. He could not or would not behave. An aide would meet him in the morning at his home, get on the bus with him and go to school, sit through the class all day, and ride home on the school bus with him. This student was known to curse principals and teachers openly in the classroom. Because he was a disabled student, he could not be disciplined in the normal way. The maximum 10-day suspension rule and 45 days is the maximum a child can be disciplined under this federal law, and then they are back in the classroom. One day, he attacked the school bus driver on the way home. The aide tried to restrain him, and then he attacked the aide. District Attorney Whetstone told me I was never more stunned when I talked to the school officials, and they told me this is common in our country. We have children we cannot control because of this federal law. He came to Washington, and he sat up in the gallery, and we talked about it. I respect David Whetstone and his views. As a matter of fact, this very incident was focused on in Time magazine. There was a full-page story about it called The Meanest Kid in Alabama, and 60 Minutes did a story about it because it is unfortunately so common around the country. What can we do about it? I began to ask leaders in the education around the state. The state superintendent said, absolutely, it's one of the biggest problems we have. I talked to Paul Hubbard, head of teachers union in Alabama. Absolutely, it's a big problem. I'm tired, he said in the newspaper recently, of children cursing my teachers in the classroom and nothing being done about it. Then we began to talk to teachers, principals, and school board superintendents. They talked about the lawyers and the complicated regulations with which they deal. It is really unacceptable. Teachers who have been trained with master's degree in special education to deal with these children have also overwhelmingly told me that this is not a healthy thing, that we're telling special children with physical disabilities or disabilities as defined by the federal law that they don't have to adhere to the same standards other children do. Right in the classroom, we create by federal law 2 separate standards for American citizens. You can say to one child, you can't do this or you're out of school. But we can say to another child, you can't do it and you can do it and you're only out 10 days or maybe 45 days and then you're back in the classroom. That is not defensible. Okay. I want to stop there. So I want to say to Mr. Sessions, here's the problem with your logic. There are some things that I agree with you about that we can meet in the middle about. And for everybody who has been defending this, I want just for a moment, stop and consider that from the beginning, let's start right from the beginning, the idea that it's not okay for anyone, regardless of disability, to behave in a way that is socially unacceptable. It's not okay to hit people. It's not, and he goes on to quote people who say that children brought guns to school. None of that is okay. And please don't think that I'm saying that that is okay. It isn't. And here's the other thing. IDEA doesn't protect kids against doing those behaviors. What it does do, and several people have written in on Facebook and said, when we set up a system where, kids are all special snowflakes and we coddle them and we don't allow for discipline, that we're setting up these horrible circumstances. And aren't all kids special and unique? Yes, all kids are special and unique. And one of the things that we've done in our public school system is we've set up a system where we feel like if somebody does something bad, let's punish them. And now I'm talking about the neurotypical kids. So if a neurotypical kid comes in and swears at the teacher, then, according to what Mr. Sessions says here, then that child, if you don't behave this way, then you get sent home. That it's just that simple. Except that that's not entirely the truth, right? All children in the United States have a right to a free, appropriate public education. All children, not just children with IEPs. We need to educate our kids. And when we get into this mindset of, when you don't fit in and you can't behave in the way that we have set up, we've made some rules and we've said, this is what it takes to be successful in this place. And if you can't adhere to that, then you're out. Now, I just want to ask you, where does that child go? Where does that child, and I'm talking about the neurotypical kids right now, the ones that swear at the teacher and they got kicked out. Because this is the premise here, that we've set up this unequal thing and that there's kids that we're throwing out of schools for bad behavior. But if they've got something else going on, we don't throw them out. And that's what's wrong. Where do the kids go that don't behave well and get kicked out of school? Because there's a name for that, and it's called the pipeline to prison. That's what that's called. We need to educate our kids. And more of our kids are having behavior problems. And some of them, it's a documented disability, and some of them it's not. But our kids, you're right, it is a problem. And as a former classroom teacher, I can tell you, it's overwhelming when you go into a classroom and the class size is 35, 40. At one point, I had an English class, a 10th grade English class that I was responsible for teaching, and I had 52 students in the classroom. 52. Now, later on, and before and after that, I was a college professor, and sometimes I had 250 students in a survey type of classroom, a lecture hall kind of thing. But in a high school, in a 10th grade English class, when you're going to teach Huckleberry Finn, 52 kids. And by the way, not enough books. Not enough books. For all 52 kids. Okay, you're going to have some behavior problems. There's no way you're not going to have behavior problems. And it's not all about diagnoses, right? But for some of our kids, there is a diagnosis. And there needs to be a line. Because as you said about this meanest child in Alabama, he either couldn't or wouldn't behave. And there's a difference, actually. Because for the kid who has Tourette's, swearing at the principal is not a choice, right? By the way, there are behavioral things that can be done to help to minimize that, but it's not a choice. So if a child has Tourette's, you're saying, according to this, that child goes home to do what? What exactly are they doing when they go home? Okay, so what if we just had a shift here, and instead of, see, this kind of stuff bothers me because we go, it's the child. It's the child. The child can't do it, so the child goes home. Is that the criteria that we're setting up? Because we're in deep doo-doo if that is the criteria we're setting up. The reality is that all kids are special, and all kids do have special needs, and all kids have the right to an education, in my opinion. Not all governments believe in that. And we have to decide as a nation here what we believe in, right? But there's a whole lot of people, and I was part of a discussion this morning on Facebook saying, the problem here is that we haven't trained the teachers. When you give teachers good training and skills for dealing with behavior issues, this kind of stuff doesn't happen. Even when there are kids who have pretty tremendous issues. Now, there are some kids, and I'm in full agreement with this, there are some kids who are not ready to be in a mainstream classroom today. That does not mean we throw them away. Those kids can be pulled to the side and be put in a different classroom where they get a little less sensory overload, and we work on things and strategies, but we don't let them get away with behavior. That's not what IDEA stands for, but IDEA is there as a way to prevent us from throwing children away. I want to talk about an event that we were at this weekend that I think illustrates exactly what I'm talking about. We had a Sensitive Santa event where we invited children and their siblings to come to a sensory gym, and they could play. So there was no waiting in line, because waiting in line can be very hard for our kids who are on the autism spectrum, especially when there's something exciting, right? To wait for Santa. And so they could play on equipment and work out their yayas. And then they got to come and be in the room with Santa. Now, and we toned down so there was minimal sound when you went into the room with Santa. We had some trees and we had some lights, but nothing was blinking. We allowed kids to take their time. We had some kids who came into the Santa room and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. It was really, really hard. And they were really struggling. Now, if you think about the typical Santa experience, waiting in the line and then getting there and then getting put up on Santa's lap, and they take the picture and it's 30 seconds and it doesn't matter whether you can do it and you're out, right? And we said, this is a sensitive Santa experience. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to give the kids time. But there were there were kids who needed 5 and 10 minutes before they could warm up to Santa, and that was fine. And we took the picture, and that was fine. There were some kids that even then it was a big struggle, that we took 15, 20, 25 minutes, and it was still not at a place where we were able to get the picture. Now, I tell you this because it would be all too easy. The easy route is to go, well, they can't do it. Right? And a lot of people be like, well, and that's too bad, but, we're not going to hold up everything else for these couple of kids because they can't do it. Right? But here's what happened. We did our level best with those kids, and then we said, let's take a break and let's come at this again, because sometimes more opportunities help. And so we said to the people who brought those kids, we said, let them go play, and then before you leave, let's ask them if they want to come back in. And every single one of those kids came back in and eventually got a picture with Santa, because we gave them more opportunity. Now, at the typical mall, none of our kids would have been able to have done it. And at our event, a lot of the kids with some extra time and help could do it the first time, but there were still more kids that needed the second time. So my question to you is, do you want to take away that from our kids? It would have been easy to go, oh, they can't do it. They can't do it. So let's give up on it, right? How many times have people given up on kids? And as somebody who loves children and knows that they grow up to be adults, I want to say to you, we have to stop that. It has never made any sense to me that a kid who misbehaves gets sent home from school or gets sent to another school. First of all, if you understand behavior and the reasons why people engage in behavior, it's ludicrous. Like, it's absolutely, you're in a lot of cases, you're giving the child what they want. What you're saying to a child is, I know you don't want to be at school, so all you have to do is X, Y, and Z, and you're out. This isn't right for neurotypical kids. You're saying that you want to put a system that, by the way, isn't working. Check your facts. Because expelling kids has never in any study been shown to make a difference in a kid's behavior. Why would it? Like, just think about it. Why would it make a difference? Oh, you yelled at the teacher and you called the teacher names, and now you get to go home and sit and watch The Price is Right? And you're going to come back in 10 days, 45 days, whatever. And boy, we taught you a lesson. Yeah, we did. We taught you act up again, and then you're out and you can go to a new school and try over there, and then we'll kick you out of there, and eventually we'll lock you up in prison. You think I'm overreacting? Check the facts. Those are the kids who end up in prison after committing some heinous crimes. So what does work? All kinds of things. There are things that work that are not expulsion with kids who have behavior problems, disability or no disability. And you know, there's been a big study. We haven't had a chance to cover it here on the show yet, but schools that are putting in meditation and seeing a difference in behavior. I don't want to just leave this topic here without giving some real tools so that if somebody is watching this and going, okay, wait a second, maybe what she's saying makes a certain amount of sense, but how would we put that into practice? So I want to go over the 4 main reasons why we get challenging behavior and what we do to combat them that isn't expulsion, and why that is such a recipe for disaster. And I want to say to everybody, don't give up on our kids. What Mr. Sessions, I know it sounds so reasonable. Let's just send these kids someplace else. They don't need to be mainstream. Let's put them over there because it's convenient for me. I really want to remind you that that's such a disservice. That would be like saying to the kids who couldn't do the Santa Claus thing, I'm sorry, you just don't get to sit on Santa's lap. Let me tell you how emotional and amazing it was when those kids were able to do it, and the smiles that were on their face. My friends, that's how you change the world. How many of these kids do you want to give up on exactly? Because we shouldn't be giving up on any of them. So we don't blame the child. We certainly don't blame the parents, as somebody did on my Facebook this morning who said, oh, this is all the parents' fault. Oh, my friends, that is the very definition of ignorant. And we can't blame the teachers and say that they just don't care, because that's not it either. But if we don't give teachers tools, if we don't give them the skills, and let me just tell you, it's starting to be taught at the college level for teachers, but teachers that are in the classroom right now aren't people who have been in school in the last 10 years, because guess what? We laid all those people off. There are people in the classroom that have much more experience with classroom, but they don't have experience with the behaviors that they're seeing in the classroom. And I know firsthand, when you give them the training, and it's not hard, you give them the training that they need, we all get back to learning. But just sending them home, oh my goodness, this is not what anybody should be fighting for. So don't get confused on this. This is not right. This is not right for anyone. And we're not talking about letting them get away with behavior. We're talking about eliminating the behavior. Is that not a smarter thing?